Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
You're listening to the Skeptic Zone, episode 738 for the 27th of November, 2022. I'll look out the window. I'm not going to give you a weather report. What do you think? This is a free podcast about weather?
Maynard, what are you doing?
I'm just doing the show for you because you come on, you tell everybody you're going to race downstairs and get some stuff that you shouldn't, and then you give them the weather report, complain about the birds and the planes, and that's pretty much the show.
You've heard the show.
Yeah, that is the show.
Folks, I'm at Maynard's International Studio for a very important reason. We've just finished filming, with the help of Jessica Singer, Maynard's Christmas special for 2022.
It's been an amazing production. I wanted to go to the next level. So the crew's doubled.
Yeah.
So that's two.
Normally I'm the crew, but we've had two crew this weekend. And so what can people expect when they tune in to maynard.com.au next weekend?
Well, I'll be reading selections from a teen magazine from December 1987 about the importance of white knee socks.
What?
When going out.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. White knee socks and brogues apparently with a go. And I've got a whole stack of stuff like that for Christmas gift ideas for people. White knee socks.
Folks, don't miss out Maynard, a very Maynard Christmas special coming up next weekend, and that'll be on the 3rd, I think, of December?
3rd of December at 8:15 the pre-show starts. But if you've got to have a wee and can't be there till 8:30, the real show starts at 8:30. But it's going to be a lot of fun, people. We've got a fire juggler, and Richard made sure the whole thing looks good.
We do have a real fire juggler. It's true. But folks, coming up today on the Skeptic Zone podcast, we have an interview with Claire Klingenberg, who is the president of the European Council of Skeptical Organisations. How about that?
Wow. So does she also run the EU?
She runs the whole thing.
Wow.
She's the Illuminati.
Wow.
Personified.
Wow. EU.
And then after that, it's the final of Rob Palmer's reports from CSICon 2022 in Las Vegas, including an interview with our friend Abhijit Chanda from India and Thomas Westbrook from Holy Koolaid. And you interviewed Thomas a couple of years back in Melbourne.
Oh, yeah, that was a good Skepticon there. That was a lot of fun. We had a great chat that evening with a whole bunch of people. Now, when all these European skeptics came here, they get off the plane and they wouldn't talk to anybody unless they all used USB-C. Was that the way they are? They're European.
That's the way they are.
I know.
We'll get to them. Get to those people in a moment. Then to round off the show, Trove once again looks at UFOs in Australian newspapers.
Well, I showed you an Australian newspaper on your visit here that was found under my very house here during its construction. It was, I think, February the 29th, 1929. It was before the stock market crash.
Amazing. This newspaper has been rolled up under Maynard's International Studios since 1929, and there it was.
Yep. It was either someone who was constructing the house either used it to wedge some wood, or it had fallen out of their pocket because it looked like it had just been rolled up, like they'd bought it that morning, read it, and were going to get rid of it.
Because about a year or two back when I was here, we were up in your ceiling and we found a newspaper from 1940-something.
47. Someone had used it to stop a bit of a small leak because it was a very economical way to do that back then. Instead of replacing the terracotta tiles, you just put some straw down with some newspaper and that would absorb it. And by the time it dried out and it rained again, it wouldn't be a problem.
It's just the sort of thing that happens here at Maynard's International Studio. Now, talking about our European guests, the whole of the ESP podcast and Claire Klingenberg were in Sydney over the week that's just passed, running around looking at all sorts of things. We had a wonderful time. We had Skeptics in the Pub and interviews with them and Skeptics in the Pub, and little bits and pieces are coming up over the next few weeks. And right now, as we speak, they're enjoying the company of the Melbourne Skeptics, including the skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
And they're on the way to Canberra, aren't they?
Eventually. After they leave Melbourne, they're going to the Gold Coast and Brisbane, then finally ending up in Canberra for the big national convention coming up next weekend.
That's an interesting way to do it. Come in Australia and end up at Canberra. It's really like, best you don't send them there first.
Probably not.
I'm sure they're going to have a great time. We all would like to Australians like to make jokes about Canberra. It's like any South American making jokes about Brasilia.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll buy
it's a capital city that's made up.
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Maynard, now it's time to run around the corner down the hall into your kitchen. What can we find?
Well, I bought you the good stuff last night, remember? I cracked open a bottle of Moe for Richard.
You did. We had a bottle of Moe last night. Is there any left, I wonder?
No, look, we're going to take turns sucking on the cork.
What?
Look, I think I can find another bottle of something out there. It might just not be from this house.
Okay, while we do that, we hope you enjoy...
The Skeptic Zone, episode 738.
Let's go. Where's that champagne?
Look, we're just going to find someone with an open window.
What a day, folks. What a day it's been. I got up nice and early. Thought, what am I going to do today? I know. I'll just go to Sydney Airport in case. You know, you never know what you're going to find. I found thousands of Samoan football fans. And then I found Claire Klingenberg. Hello, Claire.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for picking me up. That was so nice.
Well, you know, I turned up at the airport. I saw these thousands of people, and I thought they must be here for Claire.
Well, of course, because I actually did tell Annika that I want a welcome parade when I arrive here, and she said that she will arrange something, so, she came through.
She came through, and there I was. It's wonderful to see you. I haven't seen you... and it's the only time we've met.
Yes.
It was New York at Nexus, wasn't it?
Yeah. On the way here, we were trying to remember if it was 2017 or 16 or 18. One of those.
It was. Oh, hear that?
Ah, the airplane.
The airplanes. It's all true. Now, folks, believe it or not, and it just struck me just before the interview as we were setting up, we're in the Skeptic Zone headquarters. This is it. This is the heart of the Skeptic Zone, this very room, this very studio. And you're the first person I've ever interviewed in the studio. This is bizarre.
This is an amazing honor. Thank you so much. I am so happy to open up this new tradition of in-studio interviews.
Look at this wonderful state-of-the-art studio. It's got everything.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, I mean, it has all the studio stuff that you need.
Well, it's got coffee.
Yes, it has coffee, which is, by the way, amazing. It's true that Sydney has amazing coffee.
It's got coffee and it's got microphones, so that's a good start. And the Skeptic Zone cats are hiding around the corner somewhere. But you did see them when you came in briefly.
I saw 2 of the 3.
There's only 2.
Oh, there's only 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I saw 2 of the 2.
as they ran up the steps.
Yes.
But folks, and this is true, I was showing Claire around the studio, and then I said, let's go down the steps and have some Vegemite toast. So.
Absolutely, and we did. You can find proof on Richard's Facebook that we did have Vegemite toast together.
I'm pleased the first thing that you've eaten in Australia is Vegemite toast. Claire, you come all the way over here from the Czech Republic. You're here for the Australian Skeptics National Convention, of course, in Canberra in a week.
Yes.
It's close.
Yes.
But this is your very first visit to Australia.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we're going to also be in the Gold Coast. We're going to be in Melbourne, and you'll also see us in Canberra, and here in Sydney. So we're trying to be in as many places as we can manage within this time frame.
It's a busy time.
Yes.
Very busy time. And folks, Claire will also be the guest of Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki in a couple of days.
Yeah. In 2 days from now, yeah?
In 2 days. We're going to the ABC to record a segment for Dr. Karl. That's very exciting. And then and this will be all the past for the listeners, of course, because this show goes out after this is all happening. But as the listeners know who were there at Skeptics in the Pub, it was a big night.
Yes.
But it hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet, but I can tell you it's going to be awesome. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to meet each other. And it's just going to be an all-around interesting event.
Well, I know you had a good time. I mean, you're projecting from the future.
But what else are you supposed to do as a skeptic? I mean, we have to, someone has to do the psychic's job, right?
That's right. Very, very good. Now, you are... Oh, there's another plane. How about that? Normally, I don't record at this time of the day. You can tell why. But it doesn't matter. Now, yes, you're from the Czech Republic. We have met before. And you are very involved in the skeptical movement. How did that all start for you?
Okay, so it's I got more involved in the skeptic movement in 2015. I was sort of involved since 2013. So I know compared to a lot of you listening, I am a skeptic baby. So I started with the Czech Paranormal Challenge, being involved there as kind of a screening of the participants. And then in 2015, the Czech Skeptics Club was given the honor to organize the European Skeptics Congress. And because I was one of the few people who had some experience with organizing large-scale events, I was asked if I could, step in and help. And because of that, that kind of forced me more into the skeptic world to actually learn more about skeptics as a whole, as a movement, and understand what it is exactly that they do. Because before I was more kind of on the periphery, and I realized that I found my home and I found my people, and it was really an amazing feeling of discovering people that kind of think like you, and where you don't have to put a disclaimer before everything you say, and you can just have a nice open conversations with everyone. So yeah, I mean, I'm very happy that I joined our movement, and
we don't tell people that until after they join.
Yeah, exactly. But so and I kind of progressed through on doing this, and when Gabor Hrasco, who used to be the president of the European Council of Skeptic Organizations, was stepping down, he and Amadeo asked me if I would try to step in and bringing some new blood and some new fresh ideas. I was very excited too. I had no idea how much work it was going to be, but I'm still very excited to be in this position and to try to slowly but surely keep working at making, Europe more skeptical.
Yeah. And one of the things that never crossed my mind when I started doing this is every now and then you find yourself on the other part of the world, other side of the world, to do skeptical outreach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that part of knowing that you have skeptics all over the world is just amazing. Like when you travel, you can, even if you're traveling for other unrelated reasons, you can still contact the local group or try to figure out if there's a local group and at least go for a coffee with someone or for a beer, whatever you prefer. And that's just nice to have a touchstone everywhere you go.
And the conventions, folks. I can't tell you how important the conventions are, because there's the criticism, you're just preaching to converted. But my comeback to that is, well, okay, every now and then, for a weekend or two every year, so what?
We deserve it.
We deserve it.
Absolutely.
And we deserve to be with our own people.
Yeah.
And as you say, we don't have to spend half an hour explaining what's a skeptic? Oh, you don't believe? Oh, no, here we go again. Yeah.
And not just that, but also especially now, being a skeptic, or publicly being an active skeptic or a skeptic activist, whatever you prefer to call it, means that you will get a lot of hate mail. You will get threats of bodily harm or worse. And just to have the ability to kind of go into a safe space and to go among people where you feel absolutely comfortable and absolutely happy. I think we deserve that, because we do go through a lot of crap when we work. So it's a nice relief.
It's true. I think it's good for our mental health, again, because we don't have to spend all this time trying to explain to somebody who can't understand or won't understand or is antagonistic. We do that enough. Right? We do that enough, and this is something we need to do, and it's good to do. But to relax and just enjoy life for a brief time. Now, tell me about. Now, I've seen this online. You're saying that you spread skepticism in Europe, and in the last couple of years, you found yourself in Germany and to help conduct water divining tests. Now, water dowsing is close to my heart.
Yes. So I actually wasn't there to conduct it myself. It was the German group, the German skeptic group, Trove A, who conducts them, but they were very kind to call in the Paranormal Challenge team from the Czech Republic for us to be able to observe how they conduct their experiment. So that was very lovely to go to Würzburg and to see Dr. Wolf, who conducts these experiments, and Martin Mahner, who's there as well, conducting these experiments, and just kind of see the methodology that they kind of use. And if I remember correctly, they did a bucket test with...
It was in a lecture hall or
It was
something.
it was in a lecture hall.
Yeah.
It was a bucket test where the gentleman would go into the room and either the bucket was with water or was without water. And plus, what I really liked was that they had interested students there as well. So it would be the prep group would have some students, then the group with the gentleman would have some students, and then as well. So then we'd like take a break, and the students switched over so they could see both sides of the double-blinded experiment. So that was really, really lovely to integrate students like this. And we actually want to do a similar thing now with the Center for Paranormal Research that we're building north of Prague, to make sure that we have students from psychology, especially students of medicine, very much integrated within the process that we do. Because unfortunately, the fact that you are a medical doctor doesn't always mean that you don't fall for pseudomedicine. So this way, we want to make sure that they kind of get inoculated very early.
That's very true. And I love doing those tests. I mean, we don't do them very often, not as often as I thought skeptics would do them when I first joined. I thought, they must go out all the time to test people. That doesn't happen very often because it's really hard sometimes to get people to come to be tested.
Yeah, it's you have so many people who come to be tested until they figure out that they have to be tested.
Yes.
Like to the point where I maybe some of you have already heard me tell this story before, but I just can't believe that it happened. We were meeting with this gentleman because we always do these interviews at the beginning before we conduct the experiments, before we even plan them. And he was telling us all the wonderful things he could do. And when we explained, okay, so what would be your idea of an experiment design? He said, well, you know what? Let me call my wife and she'll tell you that I do what I do. And we don't have to do the experiment because she'll just vouch for me. And I was, and he was like, he did not even pause. He immediately started dialing his wife. He was absolutely serious, and he just shoved the phone at us. And she was like, yeah, he can do that. Okay,
Wow.
And to me, honestly, I know that if you live with someone for a long time, whatever they can do does not maybe impress you as much. But if you could do what the guy said he could, I think his wife would have been a little bit more impressed and would not have such a dismissive tone. But, maybe that's just something they have to work out in couples counseling or something. But nonetheless, he did not then submit to an experiment. But you have all these people who claim that they can do wonderful things. But when they figure out, oh, I have to show you. Okay, never mind then.
Yeah, this has been our situation too, I experienced. Lots of people write in to say, I can do this, this, and this. And then, they're somewhat surprised when, we need to set up a proper test.
Yeah.
And of course, you probably found the same thing. When people do the test, they will always find a reason to why the test was not good.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
So for that, we kind of stop at every stage of the test and have them sign paperwork that up to this point, everything has gone according to plan exactly. And of course, at the end, they still make comments, but we have all the paperwork and all their signatures. They make it very clear that from our end, we really did the best we could. Yeah. We offered them the best conditions that we could. They agreed with them. They continued on giving consent till the end. So we're good.
And it really, and I stress this point often, is that when we skeptics, no matter where we are in the world, we do set up a test for somebody's paranormal ability. It's fair. It's honest. It gives them every chance. We're not out to create a fake test or cheat them or rob them or belittle them. It's, you claim to do this, great. We really want you to do it,
and
show it.
Yeah, and that actually goes back to when you said that you were thinking that skeptics go out all the time. That's the reason why we don't go out all the time to test, because all these tests take so much time in preparation. So you can't really go out every week to conduct them, because everyone has a specific ability. Everyone has specific conditions that they need. Not every skeptic organization has a venue where they can do the tests whenever they want. It's because after all, we are all, or most of us are volunteers, so we always have to figure out a venue that is within the budget of $0. And so I mean, that's I know I've been mentioning it, but I'm so happy that we got the space that we got from our government to conduct these tests, because before we also had to find underground spaces and or use some even we did a couple of tests in this like hotel that has this Second World War bunker. So now we're really happy that we have our own space that we're working on, and we of course invite everyone from Europe or even everyone from the world. If you want to come and do your tests there, we'll be very happy to host you.
I can't wait to visit.
Yes.
I'll come and do a test.
Yes.
I can predict the future with Vegemite toast or something like that.
Yes. Well, I mean, that would be an awesome ability, even just like the experiment part, right? Because that's another thing. Like, a lot of people think when you say, oh, I do paranormal experiments, they think, oh, that is so exciting. Not really.
Not really.
Because like a lot of it is just like sitting for hours and just recording, okay, A. Or B, or yes, or no.
Yeah.
And it just, it is not as much fun as you would think it would be.
But nevertheless, it's quite important. So Claire, it's I can't tell you how happy I am to see you after all these years.
Yeah.
Because we do communicate online, of course, but there's nothing like
in person.
In person.
Exactly.
And here you are in the Skeptic Zone studios. And just before you go, honestly, with all your skepticism and your honesty and your integrity, what did you think of Vegemite toast?
No, I actually really liked it. Honestly, I did. I don't think I could have do a bigger layer, but that's just generally I don't like big layers of stuff on toast. But I think just the combination with the bread and the butter, it was really, really good.
Claire Klingenberg, great to see you and thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Maynard. Did you know that you can listen to the Skeptic Zone on YouTube? Yes, I know, sounds crazy, but it's true. Also, you can hear 40 logical fallacies with Michelle Bickersma and funny sketches with Richard Saunders and a host of other skeptics. Just click on the YouTube links on the homepage at skepticzone.tv.
CSICon is over. We just had the Sunday paper session, and that was organized in part by Natalia, Pasternak, who Skeptical Inquirer readers may know that I did a video interview of before the conference. And she did not mention that she was going to be the recipient of an award, so tell us about that.
Well, actually, I didn't know at that time.
Oh, serious?
Serious, yeah. I found out recently, and actually Barry said that he wasn't certain that he was going to tell me or make a surprise out of it. And I said I would never forgive you if you made it a surprise, because then I would never have the right makeup or clothes to come up on stage and get the award. So thank you for letting me know. And then, of course, he decided to let me know so that I could prepare a thank you speech and all that. So
and a little presentation about yourself. That's very nice. And so this is an award that CSICon gives out, or CSI gives out every year to a deserving individual who, what's their write-up on it? Do you remember how it's stated? Like, is a significant contributor to
critical thinking and skepticism. So
congratulations again.
Thank you.
Right. And also with Natalia is Carlos Orsi. Tell everyone who you are, please.
Oh, well, I'm Carlos Orsi. I am a Brazilian journalist. I am the chief editor of Brazilian online magazine Questão de Ciência, which is something like the Brazilian Skeptical Inquirer, more or less. And I am Natalia's husband, and I carry her luggage around. And she makes jokes about me when she's on stage. So
yes, that was quite shocking. That was very cool. That was very good. So I've met you guys before in the olden days before the pandemic, and now it's been some years. So what do you think is the difference? Did you see any difference in either the subject matter of the presentations for the conference or attitude of attendees? What do you think about that?
I was glad to see younger attendees this time. And I think it's a good sign. Maybe we're finally reaching out to a younger community of skeptics, and we need to, because we need to train the next generation of skeptics. So I was glad to see more young people around.
So this is interesting. I just did an interview with people who said they were surprised there weren't as many young people as last time. So this is one of these perceptual things.
Yep,
They
could
saw
be.
something different than you did. Maybe they saw a different group of people.
Probably.
I don't know what that's about. That's interesting. So what do you think, Carl?
Oh, I don't know about the age question. I really think that I noticed more younger people than I had noticed before, but maybe just perceptual. What I thought really interesting is that the presentations, most of the presentations, pointed towards an optimistic outlook about skepticism and critical thinking. I mean, Naomi Orsi said, "Oh, can we save science?" And she concluded that science doesn't need saving.
Yes, that was
after
an
all.
interesting talk.
And even Joe Sinski, that was very.
Yes.
You ended it telling that we can do something about these problems. I think that it can be perceptual because it was 2 years since the last convention and the memory got fuzzy. But I felt that even if we were obviously
3 years, actually.
3 years.
We skipped 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a long time.
That it seems less. It was very reality based, of course, because this is the skeptic movement. But the reality was tempered by some evidence based optimism. And in days like these, with all the stuff around us, the vaccine hesitancy, lots of science denial, and crazy people in high places and all of that, I think that optimism is refreshing.
And that's not just in the U.S.
Not at all. Well, we're not that optimistic in Brazil right now, but let's say we'll have a few more days before the election.
Let's have hope. So this was the first time that you got to have some input to the Sunday papers, Natalia, right? So could you tell us exactly what your role was?
Yeah, so Ray asked me if I could co-host the Sunday papers with him, and he wanted to make it more academic and more international. And I said, yes, of course, and because I have all the time in the world. So I did it.
Because time does not exist.
And so we tried to make it more academic. We wanted to bring more scholars and professors and grad students to the Sunday papers.
So how did I get selected?
Because you're amazing and we can say no to such a good job that you're doing. But no, it wasn't about being exclusive for academics, but we wanted to attract more scholars and more academics, because we think it's important to get critical thinking out there in schools and colleges and universities. So these were people that were kind of out of the radar at CSICon, and we said, well, let's try to get them into the Sunday papers and see if people are teaching about critical thinking.
So how did you reach out to these people to get them?
We actually changed the announcement a bit of the Sunday, of the call for papers. So we changed the call for papers a bit to accommodate that we were willing to take more scholarly papers and papers of people who were trying to teach critical thinking
So you didn't do any special outreach to particular people. They just happened to see it and it was more welcoming. So they
Exactly.
Oh, that's very nice. And you're going to be involved in the next year, it seemed, from what Ray said. Very good.
I'm going to continue, and we're hoping to also include, we don't know if a special session or into the Sunday papers, but we started a group of professors who teach critical thinking, and we want to build something of a session so that they can show their results next year. So let's see how that goes.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both for all you do, and it was great seeing you here again this year.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
I have run into someone whose voice may be familiar to Skeptic Zone listeners, because I don't remember if you were interviewed on the show, but I remember at least hearing the promos for your podcast. Introduce yourself.
Hey, Rob. Thanks so much for having me on. This is Abhijit here from the Rationable podcast and the Rationable YouTube channel, etc., etc., etc. So thanks so much for having me on.
And all the way from India, right?
Absolutely.
Wow. How long is that flight to get here?
It's about almost a 20-hour flight with a 5-hour layover in London.
But I won't complain anymore about my 6-hour flight to New Jersey.
You better not.
So now that the conference is over, was it worth the trip?
Oh, absolutely. Every single minute was brilliant. I just love being back here and meeting everyone again.
So what do you think of the differences, by the way? I've been asking that question for people who have been here pre-pandemic and now the one. Do you see any difference in the subject matter or like the type of people who have attended? What do you think?
So I have noticed that there have been a lot of younger people who have joined us this time. I met an 18-year-old. I saw there are a couple of like high school students who are just getting into college. Younger faces definitely always welcome. And I also invited my friend over, who is a budding skeptic, and she hasn't been to a CSICon before, but she also loved every minute of it.
From America?
Yeah, she stays around New Jersey. So
might have been on my flight.
Could have been. So she also loved it. That's Liz. She actually designed the logo for my website and everything for Rationable. So she's a designer. So all you people out there being science communicators and skeptics, if you want a logo made, look up Liz. Or just let me know. I'll put you in touch with her. Anyway, so. There's a little bit more diversity that I've noticed as well, which is always welcome. But of course, the most important thing is, at least in almost every presentation, it seems to be, COVID does seem to be mentioned at least once.
It's hard to ignore that.
Exactly, but it's been thoroughly lovely, and I got to meet Neil deGrasse Tyson at a meal, which was the VIP luncheon.
Oh, you forked out for that. Wow.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I mean, I couldn't miss that up.
On behalf of CFI, we thank you.
Because I've been a huge fan of his for a very long time. He's a great inspiration, and thanks to him, I've been trying to figure out how to add more humor into my communication skills. I even took a comedy workshop over a weekend.
Oh, wow.
Trying to make my podcast funnier. I don't know if it's helped.
No, you're not saying Neil did that to be funny. Did he take comedy workshops?
Oh, he just gets comedians on the show. That's what he does. Yes. I don't necessarily know any comedians I can get onto my show.
Including Leanne Lord, who has emceed a CSICon.
Exactly. I heard that last time. I really would have loved to come last time, but I had just gotten married that year, and I was flush out of cash, so couldn't be done.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that COVID was coming, but if that was the case, I would have probably thought twice. And this time I did sit for the Sunday papers. At least I managed to go through quite a few. Last time, unfortunately, just having conversations outside the hall, I managed to miss quite a few of them.
They go by quickly, so it's easy to do that. So did you happen to catch mine?
Yes, absolutely, I did. In fact, I think Richard had told me about this quite a while back, but for some reason or the other, I couldn't participate, and now I am so thoroughly upset that I missed the whole thing.
Oh, it would have been great to have you on all those Zoom talks. I'm not sure if the timing would have worked out for India, though.
It's okay. I'm a weird timing person anyway. But I would have loved to bring in, and it would have been a learning experience for me too, because I would have loved to bring in some Indian fortune tellers and psychics and see what that would happen.
So here's your chance. We talked about this needs to be replicated in other places.
Absolutely.
Right? India has a huge population. There must be a huge number of seers or whatever it's called.
Oh, absolutely. I'm quite sure of it.
That would be really interesting for someone to put all the time in, like Richard Saunders did in Australia, to do it in India. I'm not saying you have to do it, but maybe keep that percolating.
Yes, absolutely. I will percolate away.
Okay. All right. Great meeting you this year and in person for the first time, and I'm hoping to see you again at a future CSICon.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks so much, Rob.
CSICon is over, and I have one more person I want to do an interview with. This is Thomas Westbrook, who I met previously at CSICon in the days before the pandemic, and I was glad to see him here again. Introduce yourself to the Skeptic Zone listeners, in case they don't know who you are.
I am a YouTuber. I am a full-time content creator creating videos debunking all kinds of pseudoscience and paranormal stuff, but I don't go in it to debunk it. I go in to explore and learn and figure out how stuff works. And if people are being taken advantage of or given a run for their money with all kinds of snake oil and what have you, then I try to shine a light on it.
And what's your channel name?
It's called Holy Koolaid.
And you have kind of a dual role. You talk about religious issues, and I like those videos too, but the ones I really love, because it's my topic of choice, is helping people understand the con artists that psychic and mediums are, right?
Yes. A while back, I remember stumbling across some videos that James Randi had put out and seeing the way that he tested and actually took these claims and tested if there was anything to them and set these controls in place to figure out, like, is it actually real or is there something else that's going on? And that fascinated me because at the time I thought maybe there was some type of paranormal power or something that they're tapping into. And one by one, these people were coming up short. And so I wanted to know, okay, if they are fooling so many people, how are they doing it?
Right.
Just how are they doing this? And I stumbled across a number of different techniques that they were using, but there were things that people weren't talking about very much, like certain patterns that I figured just by watching a ton of their videos back to back, you see one and it kind of looks impressive, and then you watch another one and another one.
And it looks like they're reading the same script, right? Different people
yes.
and different times, different audiences, and yet it's the same script they're following.
And you also see what they do and how they react when they get a hit and when they get a miss, and how they gloss over the things really quick and you don't even catch it the first time. But then you go back and watch them again and again and you start seeing that, oh, hey, in this case, they got a hit right away and it looked incredible, but then this next time they pulled the exact same trick and the person's like, and they immediately jump to the next question, or they twist it a little bit.
And the amazing thing about this, to me, Thomas, is most of these things you're watching on television, and they're edited, right?
Oh yeah.
They only show you the best of what happened. You don't even see the awful fails.
And that's why when I'm creating videos that the first three videos in my series exposing psychics are a compilation of cringe fails, and almost without fail, when I go to find those types of videos, I do not go to the videos that are put out by the psychics themselves. I'm not going to the videos that are produced by them and edited by them to make it look incredible, because I know that they're going to trim out that stuff.
Right.
But if I go to a live recording or something where, some news anchor is talking to them, or they're going on a show and making a prediction, or they're doing a cold reading to an audience and it's just the whole thing unedited live, then I know that there might be something there. Or if they're making prophetic predictions, psychic predictions about the future, and the moment they think, oh yeah, I'm just going to make this prediction, and then they might go back and mine that prediction for all of the hits and then put all those hits on their website.
Absolutely.
I go back and I watch those 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, and I go through and I look at all the things that they got wrong, because no one else is looking at those, no one else is going back and sifting through it and showcasing it. And so when I put all of that together, then I show people, hey, these people, if they really had psychic abilities, you'd think that they would be, preventing 9/11 rather than just after the fact saying, well, I said that there'd be some type of attack in New York or something, before. And it's
of course that would cause a time paradox, right? If the information was coming from the future to them that there had been an attack and they prevent it, then where did that information come from?
The psychic realm seeing all possible paths. The Akashic records.
So that is correct. So maybe every prediction psychic, clairvoyant people always make is correct, but it's about an alternate reality, something from the multiverse. It's just not our reality.
Oh, and
have you ever heard them say that as an excuse? That seems like I'd say that.
That's where you start getting into the realm of unfalsifiability.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what is the use of this if your success rate is no better than
11%, as I presented from the Australian prediction project.
And it's nuts. It's, you look at these claims and you look at their failure rate, and it's like, if people didn't want to believe, some people are desperate to believe, or they're looking for something and there's confirmation bias at play. But you strip that away and you just objectively look at it and it all falls apart. And that's what I aim to highlight. I aim to showcase the tricks and hopefully safeguard people against a lot of these con artists that are doing a lot of harm. And
you do a damn good job of it. I have to highly recommend your channel. So let me ask you about your impression of this conference. Your most memorable talks that you attended.
I really enjoyed Neil's talk and getting to meet Neil deGrasse Tyson for sure. I also Piff the Magic Dragon is always fun. Although I'm not sure if he's more comedy or more magic show. But
it's honestly an interesting, unique mix.
Yeah, my favorite thing about these conferences is coming out and meeting all the people. And
I've heard that from a lot of people saying that.
Just to mingle and network with like-minded individuals, to realize that I'm not alone, I'm not going crazy, that there's other people out there who are also frustrated by all of the woo and the alt medicine and the fake news and the snake oil and the paranormal claims. And it's nice to know that there's other people who are pushing back against it and trying to fight for truth.
Yeah, and it's more necessary than ever since the events of the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you know, what you're doing here and what you're doing with Skeptical Inquirer is like incredibly important, and you guys are doing incredible work.
Thank you. And thanks for your time, and I'm so glad to have met up with you again this year.
Thank you.
See you again in the future.
Well, that was the final part of my series from CSICon 2022. I hope you enjoyed listening to the interviews as much as I enjoyed doing them. By the way, prior to the conference, I did video interviews with 12 of the speakers, including Neil deGrasse Tyson and Penn Jillette. All of those are available in my Skeptical Inquirer online column. And now that CSICon is over, I'll also be publishing several follow-up articles about the conference. If you're interested in those or any of my other work, look for the link to my column in the show notes. Until next time, this is Rob Palmer.
Once again to look to the skies in hopes, who knows, in hopes of spotting a flying saucer. Well, we don't hear that term anymore. A UFO. Also a bit out of date. A UAP, something in the sky. But in fact, we'll gaze to the heavens by gazing into the digital archives at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au and discover what newspaper reports have been made over the decades. Now, we've looked in the archives many times for references to UFOs, but bluntly, there are many references. I mean, we're going back many, many decades, so you can imagine during both the UFO flaps over the last decades, the 1950s and the 1970s, and more recently there's one, maybe it just simmers, and every now and then it bubbles up and then it simmers down, I don't know. Anyway, we're going to start by going way back to the era of the first UFO flap, the first UFO mania, way back in the 1950s. And we have a report from the Barrier Daily Truth, printed in Broken Hill, New South Wales, on the 30th of May 1950. Another flying saucer debunked. Lismore, May 29. The 2 weeks old flying saucer mystery in the Lismore district was solved this morning when a saucer was identified as an aircraft. A strange object appeared in the sky at 7:45 a.m., about the same time as on previous occasions. C. Hetherington of Bora Ridge looked at the object through a telescope and discovered it was the morning newspaper plane coming from Casino. And Lismore and Casino being cities in the North Coast region of New South Wales. And yes, I guess if a strange object appeared at the same time every day, it might be worth investigating. And now we'll go forward 4 years, and in this case, today we are going to read these stories in chronological order. So we go to the year 1954. On the 8th of January, it was published in the Sydney Morning Herald. Flying saucers, no longer a mystery. And it says by a special correspondent. I wonder what that means. And as you'll hear, I don't know if this is entirely serious. The latest issue of the Australian Flying Saucer magazine reports that the saucer pace is increasing in tempo. In an editorial, the magazine says it is
high time that the Australian government took more than a superficial interest in the subject,
For reasons that are
as obvious to us as to Washington and equally as vital.
The editor points out that the Australian Flying Saucer Bureau has officially requested from the Department of Air copies of photographs of the Port Moresby flying missile, taken on August 30 by Mr. T.C. Dury, Deputy Regional Director of the Civil Aviation Department in Port Moresby, and Port Moresby being up in Papua New Guinea. The magazine also lists 18 sightings of flying saucers since July in Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. It records the information of a Civilian Saucer Investigation Society in New Zealand, and it says that the mystery of the flying saucer is
no longer a mystery.
The journal adds,
The source is already known, but any information about it is being withheld by orders from a higher source. We advise those engaged in saucer work to please be very cautious.
9 countries now have official organizations investigating flying saucers. In America, a number of sighting stations with batteries of high-speed cameras have been established in strategic positions, particularly near atomic plants where sources have been frequently reported. The Australian Institute of Applied Psychology recently described repeated sightings of flying saucers as
not so much mass hysteria as collective illusion.
Others have described flying saucers as spots in front of the eyes, red blood corpuscles inside the eyes, cobwebs flying high, meteors flying high, distant headlights, Venus, the Perseids, balloons, ionized air, unionized air, cold air, and hot air, causing refraction at certain levels, and just hot air. But whether hot air or cold air, millions of words are pouring off the printing presses about flying saucers. Among the newest contributions are 3 books. Flying Saucers Have Landed, by Desmond Leslie and George Adamski. Flying Saucers, by Donald H. Menzel, Professor of Astrophysics at Harvard University, and Life and the Universe, by Earl Nelson. The authors of Flying Saucers Have Landed state that they would prefer to use the ancient names for sky disks, such as Cars Celestial, Vimanus, and Fiery Chariots. For a curtain raiser, the authors of Flying Saucers Have Landed take us back to AD 1290, to the community of Byland Abbey, Yorkshire. According to an old manuscript discovered at Amplethorpe Abbey in January 1953, a flying saucer passed over Yorkshire 663 years ago. A translation of that part of the manuscript dealing with the flying saucers says,
took the sheep from Wilfred and roasted them on the feast of Simon and Jude. But when Henry, the abbot, was about to say grace, John, one of the brethren, came in and said there was a great portent outside. Then they all ran out, and lo, a large round silver thing, like a disk, flew slowly over them and excited the greatest terror. Whereat Henry, the abbot, immediately cried that Wilfred was an adulterer.
The author's next exhibit is an old print showing the startled inhabitants of Devon gazing skyward at the neat V-shaped formation of dark elliptical objects, rather like tadpoles, with fins or maybe streaming exhausts that passed over Devon in 1804. These things are not meteors, northern lights, or comets, the authors claim. They are dark solid objects flying in formation in broad daylight. The next step is into the 17th and 18th century galleries of the Flying Saucer Museum, where we are introduced to an assembly of spacecraft of many different shapes, hues, and sizes. Few of these, claim the author, can be glibly dismissed as meteors, aurora, or other natural phenomena. Professor Menzel says most flying saucers have proved to be extraneous objects like newspapers,
newspapers, balloons and distant aeroplanes. Others have been searchlight or automobile reflections on a thin layer of cloud or haze. Our position, adds the professor, is a little like that of the policeman who, coming home late one night, saw a dim figure ahead of him in the hall. He called, "Hands up!" as he reached for his gun. He saw his antagonist also reach for his gun, so he quickly fired just as his opponent fired back at him, to the accompaniment of crashing glass. He had seen his own image in the ball mirror. In spite of Professor Menzel's debunking, 9 international organizations are requesting eyewitness accounts of the sighting of flying saucers, accompanied by affidavits and pictures if possible. Footnote. Professor Menzel advises, if you see a flying saucer, you should turn your head from side to side, nod it up and down, take off your glasses, clean them, and replace them. Move towards the saucer and see if it seems to evade. Move away and see if it seems to follow you. Stoop down. Climb a tree. Note carefully what happens and then repeat your sequence. So there we go. Some interesting advice all the way back there in 1954. And again, that was credited to a special correspondent. I wonder what the story behind that is. Now, leaping forward some years into the next decade, into the 1960s, and that fabulous year of 1965, in the Canberra Times on the 8th of July, UFO, Antarctic Mystery Object. Santiago, Wednesday, Australian Associated Press, Reuters. Scientists at Argentine, British, and Chilean Antarctic bases have reported an unusual celestial body hovering on the horizon and sending geomagnetic instruments wild. The Chilean Air Force said yesterday a British station reported the object was yellowish-red, varying to green, and zipped about the horizon for about 10 minutes. Their observations were confirmed by Argentine and Chilean scientists on the following day. The Chilean Air Force Command yesterday published a report from the Chilean station saying the object had been seen twice in a fortnight. 10 colour photographs have been taken of it. 1965 Antarctic mystery objects. And finally, we end up in the 1970s, 1976, on the 9th of June. And this comes to us from the King Island News. UFO info sought. And that's spelled S-O-U-G-H-T. So they are seeking UFO info. Our society is interested to learn that a King Island man recently reported sighting an unidentified flying object. This baffling phenomenon, which for nearly 30 years has defied a convincing explanation, is now coming under close scrutiny in scientific circles, particularly in America and France. The scientific world, after years of skepticism, is now beginning to realize that the best sightings provide evidence of a genuinely unknown phenomenon, and a worldwide data collection network has been established in America by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, a professional astronomer who for many years was the leading civilian consultant to the U.S. Air Force in its Project Blue Book investigations. This data-collecting organization, known as the Center for UFO Studies, has requested all organizations like ours in Australia to assist by sending the center's computerized data bank details of cases occurring in this country. The center has at its disposal highly qualified experts in the physical sciences and some clues to the nature of the origin of UFO manifestations may begin to emerge from expert analysis of a large volume of information from eyewitnesses. We would urge any of your readers who might have made such unexplainable observations to contact our society. The American study relies for its information on the testimony of eyewitnesses, and anyone willing to supply us with an account of their experience may be giving important details which could help to elucidate the mystery. Many witnesses to these phenomena are understandably reluctant to make their experiences known for fear of becoming the target for ridicule. However, we can assure anyone supplying us with information that no unwanted publicity will result, and that their evidence will be taken seriously. Yours sincerely, Ray W. Fisher, Honorary Secretary, Victorian UFO Research Society, P.O. Box 43, Moorabbin 3189. So there we go, some interesting examples of UFOs being reported in the Australian press over the decades, and I know we've covered this topic many times before, and we will undoubtedly cover it again. Well, yes, it is one of the classics of skepticism, investigating reports that aliens in spacecraft from other worlds are zipping around our atmosphere and sometimes even into the ocean. And, well, not so much anymore. The craze that seems to have died out, probably to a very large extent anyway, crop circles. There's around about the late 90s into the early 2000s, I think, stretching maybe a bit longer. That was the heyday of crop circles. You really don't hear much about them anymore. But whether you like to look up crop circles or UFOs or whatever the case may be, there are many happy hours waiting for you of research and interest at Trove, at trove.nla.gov.au. Type in your search, because you never know what you might find.
Well, Richard, I'm getting you a pair of white knee socks for Christmas.
Thanks, Maynard. I got you a Astro Boy t-shirt.
Yeah, it's a good one too. It's made out of cotton and everything.
Only the best for you, Maynard. What a great show that was. And coming up over the next few weeks, we have more interviews from our guests from the European Skeptics podcast, The Real ESP Experience.
And if you want to drop in on the Christmas show on the 3rd of December, it's at 8:15 Australian Eastern, whatever time it is here. And look, get in the chat room and say hello to Richard. He might be there, and you can tell him how much you like his camera work.
You can. Just go to maynard.com.au for more details. And Maynard, as ever, I'd like to thank those wonderful Patreons and PayPal supporters who keep the show going.
Look, this show doesn't get made for nothing, you know. I know Richard's always a bit, he's a bit too polite, but come on, hit the tin, people.
Hit the tin.
I mean, it's look, even whatever, just the lowest amount every month, and you get this high quality show coming up. I mean, who else is going to read old newspapers to you?
Yeah, that's right. Who else will read old newspapers, especially the ones we find under your house?
Yeah, exactly. So it's all coming your way. So come on, get in the group. I mean, really, if you don't participate in something, you can't always expect it to be there next week, people.
And talking about next week, the Trove segment in Old Newspapers looks at Stanton Friedman. The UFO Illuminati guy.
No, he only died a few years ago.
Yes,
and he was a very interesting character. And I listened to a lot of UFO podcasts of various sorts, and there's a lot of respect for Stanton. But also, they thought he was fairly fixed in his ideas sometimes too.
Yeah.
And look, he was a big believer in Roswell.
He certainly was, and we reference that next week in the Trove segment. So something to look forward to.
Cool. Okay, but look, you keep going. It'll be ancient aliens before long, Richard.
Oh! Now you've given me an idea. You have given me an idea for a future Trove.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, you've been listening to the Eric Von Daniken Show.
But for this week, this is Maynard and Richard signing off from Maynard's International Studios. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv For show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter @Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.